Sorry there. Hello, welcome. Why? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in, sit on down, have a seat. And thank you so much for being in. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms. So go ahead and subscribe to me there. Also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you guys can go ahead and also tune in to me on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the JB show there as well. So good to see all of you here. If you have not already, I'd just like to give a thank you to everyone who also is subscribed to my Substack. So if you guys would like to, you guys can go to jaybefaunt.substack.com. If you guys would like to get email notifications for this channel. Thank you so very much to all of you who have so far. And you guys will also get email notifications just like you did for this one, 15 minutes typically before I go live. So thank you so very much. I do apologize for the tardiness. Ran into some difficulties, but I am here. Also, thank you so much to all the patrons on Patreon and Coffee as well as members. Yes, I also have memberships as well. Thank you so very much to all of you guys. For without you guys, I would not be able to do this type of work. Without you guys, there would be no Jaybefaunt channel. So thank you so very much to all of you as well. So I would like to get to you guys really quick and say hellos to all my people in the chat. So good to see all of you here. First off, we have Serena coming in saying, hi, Miguel. I'm sorry. I skipped the first one. Serena says, greetings, comrades. Did y'all hear about that kid who got 65 years for stealing video games? I saw JB's tweet about it, and I am appalled. Yeah, I'm going to bring that up because that's actually a really good thing to bring up. It is absolutely necessary to talk about because, these things, are happening day in, day out in our communities. And this is one of the reasons why I talk about defunding the police, because really it's not just defunding the police, but changing our criminal justice system overall, because this system is not built for true justice. And so we got to talk about that. We also have the Jam Mom coming in saying, peace. Good to see you, the Jam Mom. Bryce coming in saying, sup, everyone. Good to see you, Bryce. We have Terry Connolly saying, hello, fam. Good to see you, Terry. All right. We have Wadi coming in saying, hey, everybody. Good to see you, Wadi. CBC Voters saying, happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you, too. All right. Bad Cookie says, this should be interesting. Good to see you, Bad Cookies. We have Sean Miller saying, you're good to see you, Sean, as well. All right. Who else do we have in here that I didn't get to say hello to? All right. Come in if you want to say the hellos. All right. We have Michelita coming in saying, bonjour, Miss Comrades and JB. All right. Good to see you in here as well. Checking on the Rockfin side. Not anybody as of yet, but that will change. So, all right. So, just an announcement. As of right now, I had a I had Akila and Nai scheduled for today. Just waiting on what's hearing back. I hope everything's all right. And so I had her scheduled for this hour. But for right now, I will be going on to a couple of news stories. In the meantime, if she appears, then I will let you guys know. But I hope she is okay. Things happen, things like that. Also, just want to say hello to Cobra Commander saying, love you, JB. Love you too. Love you back. Janice Anderson coming in saying, hi, all. Good to see you as well. All right. Sean Mills has got to put more oomph into that year, JB. All right. So why don't I cover a news story while I'm at it? In fact, that one story that was brought up a little bit earlier, I think that's a good story to to start off with, because this is also something that I think is really important about this young man. Let me get to it really quick so that you guys can have that as well, because I'm not shocked. I'm just sad because these things continuously happen. And let's see, let me bring it up here. But yeah, I'm shocked. I'm not shocked. I'm just sad because these things constantly keep happening. And I really just don't know what else, really to. Here we go. I really don't know what else to think about when it comes to our criminal justice system. Let's go. So be prepared to be outraged, of course, because this is what happens within our system. So I shared this video. You guys need to hear about it too.
This is LaKieth Smith, and he was given a 65-year sentence because when he was 15 years old, he was the youngest of his group of friends, and they were going into unoccupied homes during the day and stealing things like video games. Alabama police showed up to the unoccupied home while the boys were in it. When they got there, the boys ran. LaKieth Smith jumped a fence and got away. Adante Washington was the 16-year-old that officers Mark Ritter and AJ Renfro shot and killed. They shot this boy in the back as he was running away. This is Judge Sibley Reynolds, who gave LaKieth Smith the 65-year sentence for the murder the police committed. As you see here, on the same day before LaKieth Smith was sentenced to 65 years, Judge Sibley Reynolds gave Wesley Phelps a 3-year sentence because he was high on drugs, stole a car, and when the cops pulled him over, instead of pulling over, he put them on a chase, crashed into a tree. The car caught on fire and killed his girlfriend. Judge Sibley Reynolds gave him 3 years. He also gave David Carr, who killed a 3-year-old, only 15 years in 1 day. This Judge Sibley Reynolds needs to be investigated and looked into immediately. Go to freelakeith.com. They'll forward you to this link tree, and you can send the email to Free LaKieth. When you click that, it will open up your email browser, and it's going to Steve Marshall, the Attorney General, and the judges to overturn LaKieth's conviction and free LaKieth.
So that is the story about LaKieth Smith. That it really bothers me because let me just show you guys what I said. Because it is really frustrating. I said our system needs to be rebuilt. Serving 65 years for stealing video games at the age of 15 is extreme and shows how our system needs to end. You know, let me ask you something. When you were 15, did you do some dumb stuff? Go ahead, answer. A lot of us did. Of course, if you did something dumb that you know you're not supposed to do, of course you pay, the price for what you did. You pay the price for doing something wrong. You have to face the consequences. But when you go up against this capitalist system and how it treats people that look like me, every decision could be life or death. What they did to this boy, because like we always say, when it comes to Black people, they always age us up. What happened to this boy was the equivalent of trying to kill a mosquito with a nuclear bomb. See what I mean? Why would you kill a mosquito with a nuclear bomb? It's an excess. The punishment does not fit the crime. Right? Truth be told, how many years does breaking and entering get? How much does theft get? By the way, breaking and entering is one, theft is another. But as far as theft goes, that's, that is a crime. That stealing, it's minor theft. It's petty thuggery at best. Grand theft is anything over $1,000, which, sorry, but the way things are priced now, I'd say grand theft will probably have to be over $4,000 or $5,000 now. The law needs to change on that. But petty theft, breaking and entering, I mean, for a juvie, gosh, I mean, if maybe overnight in jail, in juvie, just to teach them a lesson. At the most, you gave a kid 65 years. A 15-year-old. By the time he gets out of prison, he'll be 80. Let me ask you. Let's go back to the video real quick. Let's go back. Because we always talk about the conflict, dogs talk about the double standards, right? And people will say, oh, well, he did a crime. He shouldn't have to do it. Look at this. Right? Wesley Phelps killed his girlfriend. Got 3 years, man. 3 years. Whether it was homicide, whether it was involuntary manslaughter, whatever. Only 3 years. Another white guy, David Carr, killed a 3-year-old and got 3 years. But LaKieth broke into somebody's house and tried to steal video game system, and he gets 65 years. Bruh, are you kidding me right now? And people want to talk about, oh, the system works? No, wait, hold up. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. It only works for a small few people. If the system truly worked for us, we would not be talking about this right now. But it doesn't, because it's not made to work for us. It's not made for us. The system is created for a few people of some key demographics. Cis, male, hetero, white, rich. If you meet those criteria, then it's for you. I don't care if you're cis, hetero, white, but poor, it still doesn't work for you. You know that. Stop blaming shit on us. God forbid if you're cis, hetero, white, but female and poor, well, you're screwed. Forget if you're black. Forget if you're trans. Forget if you're poor. Forget if you're disabled. Hello. No. Screw you. Doesn't work. And guess what? If you're rich, you can get put on house arrest, get off scot-free. That's it. Right? That's why I look at stories like this and I say down with this system, because it does not work for anybody. And it never will. Why keep a system that doesn't work for you? And people say, oh, well, we just need to reform. Reform? Let me ask you this. Take this down. Let me ask you something about reform. If I hand you a sandwich, right? But I got a little bit of shit on my hands and I get a little bit of shit on the sandwich. You still going to eat that sandwich? What if I just wipe it off? Or even just cut the piece that the shit was on out of it? Are you still going to eat it? Or are you going to have somebody else even serve you? Somebody who washes their hands, somebody who uses clean utensils in a clean kitchen, and make the sandwich for you. Or hell, just make it yourself. You can say, well, I'm not handing you a pile of shit. I'm just handing you a sandwich with a little bit of shit on it. All you got to do is wipe it off or take it off or cut that little piece off and you're good, right? Why are we doing this? Hell, to be honest with you, my analogy wasn't even that good. It wasn't. Really, to be honest with you, this system is like it's like trying to build a sloth enclosure in an aquarium. How are we to survive? We come up to the top for some air, but then that's it. And so, how are you going to build a sloth enclosure in an aquarium filled with water? You expect them to survive? We're just wading water, trying to breathe. But at a certain point, your arms get tired, your legs get tired, and you start to go under. This system is not built for us. So the only means that we have to survive is actually to smash that glass and let the water pour out so that we can actually get to dry ground and be safe. Meanwhile, you have only just a couple of tiny little fish that's just swimming around going, hey, everything's great for us. You just need to breathe deeper. Take deeper breaths. You'll be able to survive. That's what it feels like. You know what I mean? So when it comes to stories like this is what, gets me mad. Now, let me go to this article really quick. So this article says 30 years, but the other says 65. It says, LaKieth Smith. Oh, let me enlarge this just a little bit so you guys can see. Make sure. That's bigger. All right. Says LaKieth Smith was 15 when the police officer shot and killed his friend when the teens were caught burglarizing homes in Alabama. But it is Smith who will spend decades in prison for his friend's death. A judge on Tuesday sentenced Smith, now 24, to 30 years in prison, a reduction from more than 50 years he originally received, but a blow to his family and advocates who argue he should not spend decades in prison for a killing he didn't commit. A new sentencing hearing was held after a judge ruled Smith's original lawyer failed to present possible mitigating evidence about his home life and mental health. Circuit Judge Sibley Reynolds handed down the new sentence after a lengthy court hearing. Sibley gave Smith the same punishment he previously handed down, 30 years for the felony murder charge and 25 years for burglary and theft, but this time allowed the sentences to run concurrently instead of stacked on one another. What he received today was not justice, it was clearly an over sentence. That was from his attorney, Leroy Maxwell. Maxwell said the case, which had garnered national attention because of Smith's age and the sentence he received, is the poster child for the misuse of felony murder laws that allow someone to be charged for killing during commission of a felony, even if the death was unintentional. As the fatal shooting happened on February 23rd, 2015, when Millbrook police officers responded to a call of burglary in progress. A Millbrook police officer shot and killed 16-year-old Adante Washington when officers surprised the teens, local news outlets reported. A grand jury cleared the officer of the shooting, and surviving 4 teens were charged with felony murder. 3 took a plea deal. Smith went to trial. See, this is one thing I actually want to talk about as well. It says 3 took a plea deal and Smith went to trial. See, they wanted Smith to take the plea deal. They always want, people, especially people who are poor, to take the plea deal. Oops, I didn't mean that. Because the thing is that they really don't want to go to trial. They just want to, basically just like, just lock them away, take the plea, admit your guilt, and do it. The thing is that the plea deals typically are also oftentimes more excessive than what, they did. So you have some teenagers coming in, stealing some stuff out of people's houses. Most likely, not grand theft. And so even still, what the plea deal probably was probably excessive. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll just go to trial. I'm not going to admit to this plea deal. I'm not going to agree to this plea deal. I'm going to go to trial and get something, that's more commensurate with the crime that I committed. But instead, the judge decided to give him 65 years, which is ridiculous. And so this is what they do. They will try to talk you into plea deals so that you'll just accept the punishment that is a lot of times excessive already, especially if you're black. But then if you try to fight it and actually go to trial, then you have judges like this that say, nah, we're going to make it even harder for you. And the thing is that they weren't armed and dangerous, but his friend got shot and killed, but he's getting blamed for the killing because a police officer decided to shoot. He didn't kill anybody. Maxwell argued that LaKieth Smith was the least culpable of the teens because he was the youngest and there was no evidence he fired a gun. The judge heard testimony about Smith's difficult home life as well as requests from Washington's father to let Smith go free. Quote, they were kids, just kids. I don't condone them going to somebody's house and whatever. Give them time for that. But the murder of my child? No, Andre Washington said after the court. It was kids being stupid. Kids being stupid, they should be held accountable for the stupid things that they do. But if you're going to do this in excess over a child wanting to steal an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 4, we're going to go in excess to that. Should we look into the records of all these people who have done something wrong in their life and then punish them for excess as well? This is what upsets me. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Just checking on something really quick. Sorry about that. Let's see. Just one of them days that I want to be on. Okay. I'm going to share with you guys. I'm going to share with you guys the link so that you guys can also email to call for LaKieth being released, because he's been in prison since 2015. So he's already been in prison for 8 years. That is way too excessive, even for the crime that was committed. Even 8 years is too much. All right. So let me get that really quick for you guys as well. So there's a link tree here. I'll put the link in the chat really quick. And then I will also put in here. And let me share my screen really quick so you guys can see what to do. So this is free LaKieth Smith. So there's a link tree. And then if you guys go to the second link, it says send email to free LaKieth. You guys go there. Then what it will do, is it will, if you do it through your phone, it's actually easier. Oh, then you guys can share it. You guys can share the link, but you can also can go to the email. And if you do it on your phone, it'll ask, what email option, like for instance, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, different ones. And what you do is that it has a pre-written email. If you want to make different, alterations to it, you can. But then this gets sent to the state to ask to free LaKieth Smith. So, do what you can, because, people like LaKieth do not deserve this type of treatment. And it's just wrong. I cannot stand the fact that this, this young man, he's a young man now, has been in prison for 8 years for breaking and entering and stealing electronics. Like, let me ask you something. If you were put in prison for petty theft and breaking and entering, and you were put in prison for 8 years, would you think that's excessive? I personally would look at it and go, that is way too excessive. But I don't know. Maybe. No, I'm right. It's excessive. So if you guys have that link, you guys can send that, to free LaKieth. He does not deserve this. And yeah, I brought that story to you guys. And there's another story that I want to bring out, but I'll probably do that later. And so I'll especially make a clip of this, but I just want to thank you guys for, allowing me to be able to share this story. Just want to go through the chat just a little bit before my next guest comes in. He's already here. I see you. So I'll bring you in a second. So, Cobra Commander says, racism aside, I still can't believe we put the Menendez brothers in prison. The state loves scapegoats and self-imaged villains. Apparently, I didn't know the entire story, and I heard that they were being abused. So I understand now. Wadi says it was the worst. Oh, you guys are talking about restaurants. Okay. Let me see. Bad Cookie says, well, you have thoroughly depressed me with yet another wrongful treatment of black youth. Thanks, JB. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. It's just these stories need to be brought up, you know. And I'm gonna share the link tree one more time so that you guys have it, just in case anybody missed it. All right. And I'll share it out on Rockman. Actually, it's not that much on Rockman. Should be good. All right. So my next story that I'm going to be talking about, well, next story, but my next subject is Nelson Betancourt joins. So we're going to be talking to Nelson really quick. Not really quick, but this is going to be something I actually wanted to talk about as well. And I think this is really going to be a great subject, especially for those of us who, you know, focus on local politics. So joining me on the show is Nelson Betancourt. Thank you so much, Nelson, for joining.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for the invitation, and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And thank you for so much for coming a little bit early. One of the things that I wanted to discuss, and I was actually, we were put in touch by Roger Meadows, who is a friend and watcher of my channel. And you're here in Orange County along with me in Orlando, Florida, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so you guys were actually talking, and you guys actually met for a conference about public banking. And you guys were talking, and you were talking about wanting to institute or push for a public bank here locally in Central Florida. And for the people who really don't know what a public bank is, because there's a difference, because I know about postal banking. I heard it went away back in the 60s, but you know, if you can kind of juxtapose what's the difference between that and a public bank, as well as, you know, go over, you know, some of the advantages and disadvantages of what a public bank would mean for especially for local communities.
Right. Well, first of all, to start a public bank it's a financial institution, and it's different from a regular private bank that deals with making loans to people for cars and houses and student loans and that sort of thing. Okay, a public bank is a public institution that is can be owned by a city, by a state, by a county. I live in Orange County, Florida, just like you do, and I am interested in having Orange County have one of these entities. Now, the difference is that a public bank, in our case, would only dealing with developing infrastructure projects, right? He wouldn't be making loans for cars and houses and loans to students, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we need to keep that very separate. That it's only for financing infrastructure things, hospitals, roads, bridges, water facilities, transportation, affordable housing. Big problem.
Yes.
How do we finance affordable housing in a way that it's sustainable, realistic, and really handles the problem? Recently, last year, the voters in Orange County, Florida, turned down a 1-cent sales tax for transportation. We don't have a very good transportation system in Central Florida or in Orange County, let's say. And on top of that, the county is expanding at the rate that they say that right now Orange County has about 1.5 million population, but by the year 2030, they're looking at 2 million people living in Orange County, which means they're going to be probably building more roads. There's going to be more people on the roads. It's going to be more and more congested. So we're really going to have to do something about the transportation system. So a public bank would be something that could finance something like that, and would studies have been made that shows that if you have a public bank, you can reduce the cost of these infrastructure projects by as much as 50%. Yeah. In other words, half of what you pay to build a road is interest that you pay to the banks, for having the money to build these projects.
Wow.
If you want to build a bridge, et cetera, it's, you're paying interest on the loans that you make to build these things. Well, if we had our own bank, we could save ourselves 40 to 50% of all that interest, and so because we're able to do that, one of the advantages of having a public bank is that we can reduce the cost of building all these things, all these projects, and at the same time we can save a tremendous amount of taxes. In other words, for those people that are very conservative, they're always talking about, taxes are too high. This is one way to reduce taxes. But for those people that are concerned about more like issues, social issues, like, people having a decent place to live, people having good jobs, people having schools, et cetera, we can build these things without going into hawk to Wall Street banks and paying a ton of money on top of that. So it's a win-win everywhere for a lot of people. And so that's why, and the beauty of it, one of the reasons that I love public banking is because everybody is really for everybody, whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, whether you're Democrat, Republican, it helps everybody. And in my case, I especially like it because I think it really helps the working people, which is a majority of our country, is working people. And God knows we need more and more and better jobs and better paying jobs for working people, instead of what we have in Central Florida, which is notorious for having very low wages for workers.
Yeah. One of the things that, and just to, put a pin on this, from what I recognize is that postal banking and public banks are two different entities. So postal banking would mean you personally as an individual go and open a savings account, checking account, you take out loans.
Yeah.
So basically it's a person-to-person financial institution that is ran by the community or by the government. Where, back then it used to be ran by the post office that we had. I think until 1963, I think it was, or maybe
67.
67.
Yeah. Yeah, postal banking ran from 1911 to 1967.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because of, you have the postal banking, like for instance, I wouldn't need to go to like a Wells Fargo or to like a JP Morgan, Chase Bank. I wouldn't need to go to any of these banks in order to do banking. I could just go straight to the post office and actually do my banking there until they ended it back in 67. The difference with a public bank is that this is what the municipalities, both city and counties and even states can utilize in order to create infrastructure or to fund different projects for the state as itself. So one of the things that, it's kind of crazy when I think about it, but I just learned within the last year how banks actually make money. And a lot of us don't really know. It's like, how does a bank really make money, right? And from what, and I explained this on RBN, is that all a bank does is that once you make a deposit, the deposit that the bank has in its possession, it actually puts into the market and it grows that money itself once the money grows itself, the offset of what it grew, it keeps, and the money that's in your account, it puts back into your account. And so my question is to people, not necessarily to you, but to people, what if we had our own bank, both, municipally and statewide? What if we had that where they can take the tax money that we put in and grow that money in the market, and then use the money, instead of it going to a private bank, we keep it, and then we reinvest into our roads, our bridges, our waterways, our housing,
Right.
So I think that's kind of the vein, right?
Yeah, like let's stick with the public bank, and then we can go to the postal. Two different things, as you said, right? The thing about the public bank is that it's local. It's control locally. It deals with local issues. It's run by local folks. Okay, it's based on local needs. Any earnings or any profit that bank makes gets back into that community. Is not sent out to a private, too big to fail bank like Wells Fargo. And by the way, the program that you did on Wells Fargo a while ago was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And it just so happens that Orange County banks with Wells Fargo, which is an entity that is notorious for, this year alone, they paid another almost $4 billion in fines, besides the $3 billion that they had to pay back in 1998 for opening up all those accounts that people didn't know about. Now it's because they've been, doing shenanigans with car loans and things like that, and they got busted again, almost $4 billion. And so it's some people are calling for, like, hey, we got to split it up, because this bank is a continual breaking the law continuously, right? And so here we are, Orange County is doing business with this bank, and sometimes you get public officials talking about ethics and so on and so forth, and that should be like, why are we doing business with a bank that continues to be, brought to the carpet because of their illegal actions and activities? But that's another reason why I think Orange County needs to take a look at having its own public bank. But the most important thing, to get back to the issue of public banking locally, is that it doesn't have shareholders, not like a private bank. A private bank, if that bank makes money, then it's distributed among the shareholders. A public bank does not have shareholders. It puts the earnings back into the community where the bank exists. In this case, it would be Orange County. So it has to do with the values of our community. It has to be with the needs of our community. It has to do with keeping things local. It has to do with having better control over the bank, which means that governance of a public bank is extremely important. And there's a lot of transparency. There's more transparency in a public bank than one of these big banks. We don't know who's who, or they're far away, and they can do what they want with the money that they make. So here we are. We're putting our monies into these big, too big to fail banks. Let's stick with Wells Fargo, which is the local bank. And what they do is they take all that money, they disperse it among the shareholders, or they invest it in mass incarceration, in jails, weapons, oil and pipelines. I don't say there's anything wrong with oil. I don't happen to be this person that, you either have green energy or you have oil. No, I think we need to transition, but I do believe that we need to be putting more money into green energy, green manufacturing, because those are good jobs, great jobs. And those are the kinds of things that a public bank could be financing, see, which are not being financed by these other big banks. Oh, another one, nuclear weapons. I am an anti-nuclear activist. My dad died of nuclear contamination after working in a nuclear test site in Alaska.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't want my money to go to a bank that invests money in nuclear weapons. In fact, we need to get rid of them, in my opinion. Yeah.
Just to add to your point, I wanted to share this as well.
Yeah.
This is from the corporate accountability.
Yeah.
Talking about referring to Wells Fargo, it says they owned at least 162 slaves during their time. The Bank of Charleston had similar practices, accepting a minimum of 529 slaves as collateral for loans and mortgage properties. When slave owners defaulted on their payments, the bank would seize ownership of some slaves.
Yeah. This this bank has an incredible record. I wasn't aware of a lot of that in the past, but here they are. They continue to do this criminal activity, and that's why they keep being busted. And I don't think we should do business with corporations that are abusing the public good, because that's what they're doing. Okay, because they are literally undermining the law in this country. They're undermining our communities. They're undermining our financial system because they're really poisoning it by doing all these illegal things. So I think that public banking is like going back to like being very conservative, to very conservative banking, but this time with the idea that this money is going to stay locally and this money is going to serve our needs, what we need in our specific community, right? And I think it's a people talk about a win-win situation. This is win-win-win situation for everybody. And my only concern is that public officials really need to wake up to this reality. They really need to wake up to this reality because, the future financially doesn't look very good for this country right now. Another problem that we're facing, especially after the collapse of these 3 or 4 major banks recently, is that we're looking at more and more consolidation of the banking system, which means that a lot of community banks, small community banks, are also being lost and taken up by these big banks. Okay, and the thing is that if we don't have, community banks and credit unions that lend money to the local businesses, to small local businesses, then the quality of life, the quality of our economy is going to be a lot less. It's going to be worse if we don't have that ecology, okay, of different kinds of banking going on, instead of having one huge bank controlling all the financial activity of a community, okay? And so, diversification, diversity, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
In our financial economy. And I think that would be very, very good for any community right now. That's why I say the future is local and the future is public. At a time right now when the country seems to be, I hate to say it, but it's really deteriorating very, very fast.
Very fast.
We need to be looking at what can we start putting in place right now that will be there when, when things could be much worse. And I think it reminds me of a saying by a guy that used to be one of the best hockey players, Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky used to say, I don't. A good hockey player doesn't play where the puck is, but a best hockey player plays where the puck is going to be. You know, in other words, you don't play where the puck was. You play where it's going to be. And I think that we need to look forward. We need to look at ahead of what can be happening to our communities in the future. If there's you know, I don't know if people read, but the possibility of having a major recession this year, you know, they say even worse than the one that we went through in 2007, 2008. My God, that's terrible. You know, 10 million people lost their homes. How many millions of people lost their livelihood? And something worse than that, you know, that can't be. So,
Well,
go ahead.
well, no, I mean the 2008 crisis. I mean that was really on the fault of the banks because of the subprime mortgage crisis that they caused because they were basically giving out home loans to people who really couldn't afford them, and then they were defaulting on those loans. So I mean, it's just really when you look at the fault of everything, it always goes back to the banks. And what if the primary reason is because these banks are in private hands. And I love what you said that the future is public.
Oh yeah.
I honestly think that is one of the best things about having a public bank. It can create infrastructure that we have at the ground level, so that when if in case and hopefully a system does change, we still have that apparatus in place. This is something I actually want to share. My friend Savvy Sav, she shares this all the time, and this is actually the biggest banks in the world. Out of the 5 biggest banks, China has 4 of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they are publicly owned banks.
Right. And that's why they're able to build. I don't know if you've seen the videos on YouTube where they show all these beautiful train stations, trains, and so on and so forth. The thousands of miles of train tracks that they're able to have in China. Why? Because they have a public bank that's able to finance this infrastructure thing. And what you do is you create the credit first, you build it, and then from the earnings and fees and so on and so forth, you pay it back to the bank. So it's like we've been thinking kind of backwards. We think, oh, the money has to be in the bank before we're able to spend it. Now, for us as individuals, that's the case, right? Because no bank is going to allow us to say, well, I'm going to buy this house and I don't have money in the bank, but it'll be there sooner or later. No, they're not going to buy that. But if you have a public bank and you can have, you build the asset, and then from the earnings and fees that come from that asset, you pay the bank back. Of course, that's all being done by a county, a city, not an individual. Okay? That's why they're able to do that. So that's why in China, they're able to have thousands of miles of beautiful light rail systems. And here in the United States, we have barely 400, 500 miles of light rail systems in the United States, in the entire country. Because there they build it and then they pay themselves back from the fees.
Yeah. For instance, what is the new rail system that we have coming from Miami?
Brightline.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that number one, Brightline is privately owned. I think it should be public. That's one thing. But on top of it, if we could fund a high-speed rail, like if we can have a high-speed rail system here in Florida, I think that would be something that would be phenomenal. I mean, think about a high-speed rail system that goes from Miami, Miami-Dade up to here to Orange County, and then goes over to Lake County, Osceola, as well as Volusia. I think that would be amazing. But the thing is that they're going to say, well, we don't have the money, when in reality, we could have the money if we had a public bank so that we could have more high-speed transit. I mean, look at Sunrail. How long did we wait to get that?
Right. Yeah, and we can do that. It's not like we're inventing the wheel. Around 18%, maybe 20% of all banks in the world are publicly owned. In other words, they're owned by the governments, or so it's a question of like, I think it takes courage, it takes vision, and it takes thinking creatively to be able to do something like this. But I think that as long as our representatives, our politicians, are more interested in representative, moneyed interests rather than the people that they were, there to represent, which is the majority of us, right? I think we will have a more difficult time getting them to understand the need of these kinds of changes that need to be made. But they need to be made. I mean, that's what I'm working on in Orange County.
But
go ahead.
My question, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but this question is in my head, and I know it's going to be in other people's heads.
Yeah.
And you talked about the issue of money in politics.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt that there are people who are at the top, and by people who are at the top, I'm talking about the powers that be, that know the benefits of a public bank and how it would mean for people. And really, it would help. It would be more of a combatant against the system or the status quo.
Yeah.
How would we be able to shift, the focus on getting something like a public bank off the ground, when in reality, they wouldn't want something like this because it means it helps people like you and I, John Q. Public.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't help them. It wouldn't really benefit them because the system already benefits them as is.
Right. Well, first of all, yes, you're right, and that's why it takes a long time to you and I can look at the viability and the sustainability and the justice and the beauty of a public bank, what it could do to people. But these vested interests, if you will, they're not interested in that because obviously it opens up the game, for all of us to participate. Mm-hmm. But you know what? That's a fight that we need to have. We need to be, if more people were really interested in fighting that kind of wall that does not prevent us from having the capacity to have better jobs, to have a better quality of life, then that's why they keep us fighting each other over insignificant things, over sexual things, over abortion, over all this, all these like very personal things. They keep us fighting each other over these things instead of like the big thing. The big thing, the way I look at it, like the big thing is you handle the economics, handle the finance, and then the other things will just, they will open up the space for people to really communicate about these issues instead of fighting each other, which is what we're doing with all these social problems. We need the space to be able to talk to each other, to really listen to each other. But I think in the back of this is the fact that our lives are so constricted by I need a job. I need to stay in this job because if I lose this job, I think if people had more space to be able to know that they could get a decent job, that they could feed their families, that they could if they wanted to have a good education, that they could have the wherewithal or the means to go forward with it, that I think that they would have more time to be able to explore these other more all these other, like racism, poverty, all these other things, that we could really sit down and talk to each other, that we would have more time to do that. But as long as we keep fighting each other over these things, we're not going to really fight the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the fact that, the economy has been taken over, finance has been taken over by these big guys, and they don't want us to have any of that, because that's our freedom. I hate to say it, 80% of our life is work. The other 20%, is sleeping and so on and so forth. So 80% of the time, we're struggling to make a living. A lot of us,
Well, yeah, most of us, yeah. In fact, just to add to your point, I put out a tweet. Was it yesterday? I said that if you're making under $65,000 a year, you're actually living in poverty. People don't want to accept that.
Yeah,
because because we have made the notion of living in poverty as a moral failing, when really poverty is just a systemic failing, because you need a small, tiny group of people at the top. You need to have poverty in order for a small, tiny, group of people at the top to be at the top. And so that's something that, I think that people really need to wake up to, because once they realize that this is on purpose, then it's like, okay, we need to change the system fundamentally. One of the things that I actually wanted to bring up as well, and this is interesting, because you're talking about financing or using a public bank, for us to kind of get off of our shoulders a lot of what weighs us down. One of the things I think about is housing. And there's a housing first model that's going on in Finland right now. And what about places like here in Orange County, Florida? Like, what if we had a public bank that funded a housing first model, so that housing is a right, so that people don't ever have to worry about being housing insecure?
Right.
I think things like this would be interesting. Just the first paragraph or so. It says, utilizing housing first concept, Finland has been able to provide its homeless population with small apartments and counseling without preconditions. As a result, the country reversed conventional aid, emphasized the importance of stable living conditions, and saw a sharp decrease in its homeless population.
Right. Yeah.
So if you want to speak to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, let me quote you something that I think Martin Luther King said, that we basically need to change our values from a society that where we're looking more at the material aspect of it, to where we're actually looking at a people. I was reading about it today. If I could find it, I could read it. It's a beautiful quote by Martin Luther King, that we really need to change from a society that is into things to a society that needs to be more in tune with people, right? That we value people instead of things. Here's a quote: "We as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values." This is Dr. Martin Luther King talking. "We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motive, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered." It's like, fundamentally what we're looking at in this society, it's a radical revolution in values, and we don't even have to call it radical. I'll give you another quote by Bob Moses. Bob Moses was one of colleagues of Dr. Martin Luther King. In 1964, he used to say, we're not here to bring politics to our morality. We're here to bring morality to our politics, right? And so what that means is that we fundamentally, what this whole thing is about is a spiritual evolution or revolution, if you want to call it that. But we need to start thinking in those terms to be able to resolve this problem. There's absolutely nothing that cannot be resolved if we do it from a spiritual foundation. And I don't mean religious necessarily. I mean from deep within, from taking a look at this as being a person-oriented society to a thing-oriented society. That's what I mean by spiritually. Also living a good life in the present. And I think any fight that is worth anything has the odds against you. So in this case, regarding the public banking issue, yeah, there's going to be people there that are not going to go with it. Right now I'm getting all kinds of resistance from the powers that be in Orange County. I mean, I'm seeing it in my own county, even though this would be so beneficial to so many people in Orange County.
Yeah.
But to me, this is not a political fight. To me, this is a spiritual practice. This being engaged with public officials. Look, this is not my bag, man. This is not my bag. Finances and economics, this is not my thing. I mean, I'm a philosophy, literature, art, music. That was who I've been all my life. But then when I found out about public banking, it turned my whole world around. Yeah. It's taken me years to study, a personal study. I've never been to a university to study finance or economics or anything like this. Personal study and attending seminars and conferences and things like that to bone up to understand what this is all about, to understand banking and all this stuff. But, it's because I do want literature to thrive. I do want artists to thrive. I do want, people to have they want a good education, to have a good education, whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
And so where nothing is, where the first thing out of somebody's mouth is like, well, we don't have the money. Oh, where are you going to get the money? That to me is so superficial. That to me says that you really haven't deepened the conversation to really understand, what's really needed. So when somebody says to me, well, where are you going to get the money? It's like, this person is putting the cart before the horse. No. You first of all, you really have to understand the necessity and the value of good education, of good paying jobs, of happy families, of good quality of life. You have to understand the value of those things, not how much it costs. It's the value that we need to put our attention on, and realize that, it's like we live in a world of abundance. We really do. And I'm not trying to be religious about this thing, but to me, we do live in a world of abundance. Oh, yeah. But we ourselves are blind to it. We don't see it, and we need to start seeing that and be willing to share, be willing to work for it, and be willing to fight for it in many ways, because it's a challenge,
Absolutely. I mean, well, one thing you're speaking to is that we have this myth of scarcity within our country, that there's not enough.
Right.
But in reality, it's like this. It's like going to a banquet, and at the banquet table, one or two people have almost all the food at one side of the banquet table, and you have everybody else that has to share a half a piece of pie.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, you guys know. And here's the thing, and I don't mean to scare you, but the revolutionary in me says, well, how do we get the money? Well, we go to the people who actually stole it from all of us at Windermere and Isleworth and seize it. Like that's the revolutionary in me that goes like, no, that's not their money. They stole it. They took all that from surplus labor. That's our money. So therefore, we need to take that back and then also implement a public bank so that we can actually be able to fund the infrastructures that we need for ourselves. Because a lot of people don't know this. I live on the bad side of John Young Parkway. All right, I'm in the Americana area where it's basically, you got Orange County Sheriff's Office here day in, day out, all the time. And why is this neighborhood like this? It's because it's the poverty aspect. Poverty breeds crime. And so the thing is that really we are victims of a system that has been built for just a small few people. So to be honest with you, part of me sees a public bank as part of the fight in order to change this system fundamentally from the ground up. And it's not the end all be all. It is just one of the tools in the box that we can use in order to really change it from the ground up. Just like, for instance, I had to applaud China for its public banking institutions because they were able to also instill the Belt and Road Initiative, which is also helping other countries in order to build up their infrastructure. Right. And so then it also puts into our minds, it goes, well, if we can make, our system more public facing instead of profit facing, on a small level, like here in Orange County, Florida, can we expand this to Florida, the entire state? Can we expand this to multiple states or even to the entire country? And so, I'm coming to the conclusion that revolutions are not one thing happens in a 1 week and then it's over. Is that some of these times these things need a slow start, but as boulders go, when they go down, they start off slow, but they start to pick up speed. And so I want the ideas of, people truly, the public really owning the means to come into fruition. And so I just wanted to add that into what you were saying.
Yeah. And James, and the other thing about it is that sometimes it's like the society changes and a window opens where when you first started maybe doing something about an issue, that window was completely shut. You say, well, how could this ever be? Right. But then societal changes happen and all of a sudden a window opens and the thing that you've been working on all of a sudden has relevance, fits, is exactly what's needed and wanted. It's you're at the right time at the right place at the right time. But if you hadn't started that whole thing when there was no chance in hell, excuse my language, of this thing ever happening, then, it wouldn't be ready for it to happen. That's why I'm saying, don't play where the puck is. The puck is the little thing where you play with in hockey. Okay. Don't play where the puck is. Play where it's going to be. And forget the obstacles. The obstacles is the way. That is the way. If the obstacles are in front of you, that's the way you should go.
Yeah, because they wouldn't be standing in the way if it wasn't,
right. Exactly.
The right way.
Exactly. And also what you're saying about I think that in theater improvisation they say that you say yes to what somebody offers to you, but you also so yes, you have somebody that's multimillionaire, billionaire, taking a lot of money. They've gamed the system. They've taken away from you. That's all true. But you know what? It's like I happen to think that what Buckminster Fuller, who was the inventor, philosopher, we know him when you go to Epcot, the big ball. That's called a geodesic dome. He invented that. Buckminster Fuller was an engineer. He invented the geodesic dome. It's based on the triangles. They're all made out of triangles. Why? Because a triangle is the strongest structure in the universe itself. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so Buckminster, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but Bucky Fuller says, don't fight the existing situation. Build something in its place that will replace it. So and that's why for me, public banking is that thing that will. I don't want to be fighting the billionaires. I'm not interested in that. I had this realization this week. It says, if you can't fix it, let it go, and just put your energy into something that's really positive, productive, where you are free to just give it your all. Because if you get into just reacting, you get consumed in it. You often get burned out, and it might even lead to just hating more than loving, and you gotta have love on your side, on your sails to push you forward, because there's going to be plenty of obstacles in the way anyway,
Well, actually, you just made a case for dual power. And and I go back to, like, for people like a lot of people look at the young lords, the young patriots, and the Black Panthers. They did was that they built dual power outside, so that people go, I don't need to go to these institutions that are ripping me off. I can just go to this people power institution and utilize them. And as that grows, it shows, okay, we don't necessarily need these people who are pulling all the wealth and energy out of us. Right. We can just have our own thing over here and let that grow, instead of having the system. It's like you're fleeing the system. So if you don't use it, you lose it, right? Yeah. So if you don't use this system, you lose it. And so I think that's something that is great, because we can have a public institution like a public bank, and on top of it, we start doing things outside of these private banks and things like that, and utilizing them, and it can grow from there.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's something that we can see, touch, feel, smell, right? If we build a bridge, if we build a highway, if we build affordable housing, if we have green manufacturing, if we diversify our economy here locally, if we preserve some of the land, in Central Florida that we can use for, to really enjoy, right? Instead of just paving it over, right? I mean, that's important. I think that's important for our quality of life. Then it's something that I think that we can feel more invested in it, and we feel that, and it's real, it's tangible, instead of kind of depending on whether some big bank in New York is going to lend us the money to build something that we need, and then if let's say if the powers that be locally feel like, well, that's not necessary, we don't need to build affordable housing for the poor on this side of town, or we don't need to build parks for these people in the south part of town. We just need to build a more beautiful park, a business park in Winter Park, right?
Like they actually need it.
Right, exactly, right. So in other words, it gives us better control. I guess I'm a super freak about control, but it comes with knowledge, right? And responsibility. That's another thing that I find that this is why this is beautiful. I think that as citizens, we really need to have a sense of responsibility to be citizens. To me, calling yourself a citizen without responsibility is an oxymoron. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. You have to be responsible. And I think that by if you support public banking, you are being responsible not only for yourself, but for the lives of other people. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what I mean by spirituality, caring for others. That in a nutshell defines for me what spirituality is. Just caring for other people. We need to take better care of each other. That to me is what whole spirituality is about. And that's what I think in the long term is what is going to help us break through all this conflict and all this dissension and all this bickering and all this stuff that is going on. Because guess what? That's what the powers that be want us to do. They want us to keep us in that treadmill, fighting those stupid games that are not going to lead the majority, the greater number of us, the common good, forward. And so we need to kind of wake up to that reality. Public banking is a beautiful thing. It's worth fighting for. We need it. I would like it to be Orange County, Florida would like for it to be a model for the rest of other counties. And like you say, James, eventually, that's why I want to see, maybe I'm not that ambitious. Some people want to start it at the state level. I don't want to deal with it. Other people can do that. I just want to do it locally because for me, the future is local. The future is public. And that's what my heart is wrapped around it, And if we can make it work locally, we can expand it little by little, because it's like we are, because our country is deteriorating, man. Our country is collapsing in many ways. And it's like we need to start sowing seeds that are going to be there sprouting when things could come undone,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I hope it happens. No, I hope it doesn't happen. But the thing is, I don't see that kind of mentality in most of our representatives in saying, yeah, you know what, we really need to address this, And again, going back to the funding of things, it's like I'm a big proponent of public funding of campaigns. I think political campaigns ought to be publicly funded because right now our campaigns are privately funded. And here's what you get. People that have the greatest amount of money are going to, basically control that system. And we're going to get whatever crumbs they want to give to us. Instead of being invited to the meal, we get the crumbs.
Yeah.
Right?
And
that ain't right. That ain't right.
Look, as a fluffy man, I am tired of crumbs. Let me tell you.
Yeah. We don't need that when there's so much abundance in this world. There's so much abundance in this world, and there's no need for this stuff to be happening. So if you kind of take a look at it, you say, well, okay, but it ain't going to happen by itself. You have to get involved. You have to be active, and you have to. Hopefully, you're putting your shoulder to the right wheel that's going to move the thing forward. And in my case, I feel that public banking is one of those things. And you're right, James. It's not the cure-all, but it's a big piece of things that can give us a lot more freedom and liberty to operate in our lives. I would rather see someone making, a good living, not having all that pressure, not having all that, perhaps going home, having to drink and, domestic violence because the person doesn't feel like he can or she can, make a decent living, or has so much pressure on top. And, this is not why we don't need this, But it requires people like you, and that's why I admire you so much for doing this. You know, yeah, I mean, I really do. And I like to do what you're doing in a way, because I think it's admirable to be able to bring people and have these kinds of conversations. They're essential. You're creating safe space. And that's what we need. We need safe space, little pools, little islets of safe space, and they grow out. Because again, if you're in media like you are, media again is consolidated more and more, and they're choking. They don't want these ideas to be discussed in mainstream media, right? No, they want to squeeze us. No, open up the space, open up the space, open up the space, open up the space, little by little, and universe or the society or you begin to make space little by little. And that's the beautiful thing. That's a spiritual fight. That's not political, I don't think. I think it's, if you're doing it for the right reason, which is to like make it better for other people, that's a spiritual fight. That's a spiritual fight. And that's the beauty of the work. And that's the beauty of the work.
Yeah, you just spoke to something that I say quite often is everybody talks about everybody talks about personal responsibility, but nobody talks about community responsibility.
There you go.
So,
there you go. Yeah.
Just you had shared this article a few weeks back, and I just want to get into this as well. It says, "Can public banking save the financial system and prevent consolidation and a credit crunch?" And I found this really interesting.
Yeah.
Because this came out last month. It says on Fox Business, Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary, aka Mr. Wonderful, which I don't like him at all, touted North Dakota's remarkable pro-growth environment with the nation's fastest growing GDP per capita. So it says, while Kevin O'Leary praised North Dakota for its pro-business policies and oil and energy production, he also praised the state for its sovereign public bank, which may seem antithetical for a Reaganite conservative. Kevin O'Leary deserves scrutiny for being the paid spokesman for FTX after previously calling crypto garbage, but it's nice to hear a pro-business conservative make a free market case for public banking. O'Leary, who opposed the bank bailouts, considers public banks a more fiscally responsible alternative for putting the taxpayers on the line for reckless banking decisions and a moral hazard. There is also much less risk of bank runs with fractional reserve banking, where banks are only required to hold a fraction of deposits.
Right. Yeah.
So this was a really interesting article, basically talking about how, the public banking can actually also keep us away from having these different types of risks that public banks, due to their greed and selfishness, that they are subject to. And public banking is not subject to that same greed and selfishness, at least at that level.
Right, that's right. Well, one of the reasons is that a public bank only has one depositor. In the case of Orange County, it would be Orange County government, or instead of Orange County putting its money into Wells Fargo and paying them money to hold their money or our money, right? Then they would have its own bank, and they can run it like its own bank. The beauty of our fractional, what we call fractional banking in the United States, is that for $1 that you have as capital, you can lend out 10. That's how our bank system works. And that's why banks make so much money, because really, when it's all said and done, the business of private banks is to sell us credit. That's it. And they charge us for it. They're charging us for it, right? So what I'm saying is, like, wait a minute, why don't we take back that power and use it for ourselves, for what we need, for our local needs and things that we value? Like right now, you're talking about the instability of the banking system in this country. a recent article says that about 4,800 banks in the United States are nearly insolvent. 4,800 banks are nearly insolvent.
Wow.
So we're not done with this monkey business that's been going on with these 4 banks that got bailed out. And that's why, if you read, there are people still talking about, we haven't seen the recession that's coming yet. So what I'm saying is we need to really be working to put something in place, that is not going to create such havoc in our community that we are going to be losing more than we ought to, or that we don't have to. We don't have to, We just need to be a little bit more visionary. Look to the future. There's a line that I really like from a song by a rock group. Genesis used to be one of my favorite groups, and there's a line from that they used to sing from a song, and the line says that I'm hovering like a fly, waiting for a windshield on the freeway. Right. I'm hovering like a fly, right, waiting for a windshield on the freeway. And this is what I see public officials are like. They're like flies hovering, waiting for the disaster to hit them in the face, right?
Mhm.
Before they do anything. And so, you got it, right?
Well, I mean, we have disasters.
And then they have the audacity to say, well, we didn't know. Come on already. If I know, I'm not in government. All I do is I read. That's another thing. Maybe public officials don't read anymore. I don't know. But it seems to me that if you really want to be engaged in any kind of change activity, you have to read. Anyway, so we need to get the government officials off this kick that they don't know. They do know. They just don't want to move and do what it takes. You've got to have the courage. You've got to have the guts, to do it.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it. You should be doing it for the people. You take the risk for the people, Most public officials, I think, are interested in just their careers, their political careers. Yeah.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's only, there's just a means to make it look like they're working for the people when something happens. Like, for instance, there was speculation of whether we were going to get Tropical Storm Brett and eventually Hurricane Brett here, within the early next week. They're saying that maybe it might not happen, but we're now in hurricane season here in Florida. And how many times per year where we're just like, oh, is this going to be a big one? And we're sitting here like, look what happened, in the southeast. I'm sorry, the southwest. What happened with the last hurricane. I mean, look at the neighborhoods, how they were completely destroyed. And so, a public bank or some type of institution like that could be a huge lifesaver.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things you were saying is about...
Let me just say something about that, James. As a matter of fact, you bring up this disaster thing. In North Dakota, experienced that kind of disaster. And because they had a public bank, they were able to, first of all, like people that had mortgages and things like that, they were able to, the Bank of North Dakota has been around for 103, 104 years now. So they're able to do a lot more things because they've been able to, now they've been very successful. Their return on investment is like 20%. It's almost like 20%. That's unheard of, right? Unheard of, right? Because they manage things very conservatively and they manage things for for what needs to be done for the people of that state. Um, but they had a disaster. They were able to, stop charging people their mortgages. They were able to make loans to people that needed loans for like 2-3%, and not this god awful 15-18% that most banks would probably charge, right? Because they have that flexibility. They have that flexibility with a public bank. We could do the same. Okay? And I'm glad you brought that up, but that is another thing that is great about a public bank. It gives us the flexibility. It also gives us the flexibility to be able to make loans where big banks stop lending to small businesses, right? A big bank would never forgive your mortgage until you're back on your feet. They'll never do that. But a local public bank could do that, okay? Because their interest is not in making money, a profit, right? Their interest is in doing right by the people that in that area, but of course, being viable. That's why a public bank is not run. This is another thing that I need to clear up with the people that are listening to this and watching this, is that this is not run. A public bank is not run by politicians. It's run by bankers, people that know banking, the mechanics. They know how to run a bank, okay? And yes, there's very strict governance. There's board of directors, et cetera, et cetera. There's community representation. So people that are thinking, oh, public bank, they're just going to give our money away. Heck no. In fact, there's going to be more controls over a public bank than there is over a bank like Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase. Look, I mean, I don't know if you've been reading about JP Morgan Chase lately. I mean, those guys are paying, they're going to be in really deep trouble with this whole Epstein thing. I mean, gross. Wow.
Ooh, boy.
Man, yeah. And so why do we want to deal with this kind of crap?
We don't.
We can keep local control. We can do more things for the people that need it locally, and we need to be doing it at a lot less cost than these too big to fail banks are making us do.
Yeah. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about, because you said, about taking power back, it's, as the saying goes, power concedes nothing without a demand. They never have and never will.
Exactly.
The thing is that demand needs to be so strong that it may have to come to something more drastic. And my thing is like when it comes to something like a public bank, it's almost kind of like a litmus test. And it's not necessarily a litmus test for people like you and I, or the people that's watching, because they typically know what the powers that be, and I say that in a phrase as the corporate dictators. They are the ones who use the state as their tool in order to push whatever they want. But when it comes to trying to implement something like a public bank, you're going to have the banks that are going to catch wind of this. They're going to try to stop it. You're also going to have the insurance companies. Because what if we do have a natural disaster and you're able to get your behind saved by a public bank versus having to go, with any of these, insurance companies? Let's say your house gets flooded, and you don't want to have to go through your insurance through Farmers. Well, you go through the local public bank instead, and then they actually end up helping you out with your, home infrastructure. Well, of course, companies like Farmers and all these other banks and financial institutions, they're not going to like that. So they're going to try to stop you any which way they can. And my thing is, it's like, if this is going to be something that if they stop it, the noise has to be made as loud as possible to say, look, We tried.
Mm-hmm.
We tried.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And it may get to a point where, and look, I'm starting a chapter here where we're going to be focusing on mutual aid.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be really just, bare knuckles, building dual power so that people can depend on something outside of this system.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is a way to show people that, yes, we can actually implement something like this, but those oligarchs, those corporate dictators will not stop until we heal, and we will not. And so it's like, okay, so what are we prepared to do? And so I feel like it's kind of it's kind of like the hippo on the log in the middle of the river, where it's surrounded by alligators, and the mother's just standing back and watching and is going, okay, I dare you to actually make a move. And then once you make that move, then I'm going to use my jaws to snap you in half. And I feel like the public bank is kind of like that. It's like, okay, let's try it. But I dare you guys to do something. But I trust the snake to be a snake. I trust the banks to be the banks. I trust the insurance companies to be the insurance companies. And I trust them to get in the way. And it's going to be kind of like used as a cudgel to actually, encourage more people to be activated to build dual power outside of the system, because that's the only way I can see. And the thing is that I'm counting on being them, but I also want the public bank to succeed, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? So, so it's like, I want it to happen. I want it to succeed, but I'm also counting on these powers that be who they truly are.
Yeah. I mean, you're being realistic. Realistically, this is not a walk in the park. Okay. It's like there's an author I like very much. His name is Gar Alperovitz. He says, if you want to be in this game, you got to be willing to throw at least a couple of decades on the table.
Yeah.
I've been at this for 10 years, James. 10 years. Okay. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. 10 more years, 15, 20 more years, whatever it takes. It means that much to me. So I'm under no illusion that this is an easy thing. But if it's worth fighting for, if it's worth, this is where the squeeze is worth the juice, or the juice is worth the squeeze. I should say.
Either way, I'm thirsty.
And I think it's really worth the fight, and it is a fight. But again, a lot of it is getting other people to find out more about it. But the other thing is, again, circumstances around the issue opening up and creating the conditions for something like this to, be more readily accepted. In other words, those conversations that I'm having nowadays with these public officials in Orange County today they may say, oh, well, they could be very, they may not see the use of it. I know at least a couple of them that are really, they really would do something, but they're keeping on the QT right now. But I know that when people lead, politicians will follow. Is my opinion, that sometimes the community people have to lead the charge, and then if you're winning, they want to be in front of the parade, right? I've always been, for this kind of thing, right? Yeah, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it, There's a line from a poem that says, "It's too soon to quit, and it's too late to cry." In other words, this is going to take whatever time, and I don't have time to cry about it, that it didn't happen before. So it's too soon to quit, and it's too late to cry. got to do what you got to do and go with it. Keep going. Yeah.
One of my final questions actually is, as far as the implementation of this, or to push the politicians, could there be an apparatus through, like, for instance, a citizen ballot initiative, or, because I know when we talked privately, we were talking about the county constitution, things like that. Is there a certain routes that we can go regarding pushing for public banks, in order to implement something like this?
Yeah. Currently, I don't know if people listening to this, in Orange County, we have what is called the county charter. The county charter is like the constitution of Orange County. And every 4 years, they set up a committee to look at, do we need revisions to the charter? Do we need to add new things to the charter? Do we need to make changes? Well, currently, the Orange County Charter Committee is meeting. They meet for a year and a half, and they solicit public input. You and I can go to these meetings. You can talk about whatever issue of concern. Say, we need to look at this issue. My issue, of course, is public banking. Well, I went 4 years ago and made a presentation. They could care less. I went nowhere. This year, I am more connected because, thank God, I was able to retire this year. And so now I got more time in my hands and more time to actually go to these meetings, because some of these meetings are also like in the middle of the day when people are working. So I'm able to attend these meetings. So yeah, I'm going to be proposing that Orange County look at putting a ballot initiative about public banking for next year. Maybe they will set up a separate committee to study it. Maybe not. I don't know, but it's worth the effort. The other thing is the ballot initiative. Okay, well, as a matter of fact, right now, one of the committees is studying the idea of a petition. You could do this by petition, right? But back in 2016, the petition process in Orange County became so restrictive. I mean, it was almost like citizens. You had to be extremely wealthy to have a petition, and they put all kinds of barriers. You had to wear a badge. You had to sign affidavits. It was incredible. And so somebody brought this up. It says, we need to change this again, because citizens in Orange County will not be able to have a petition. And they're right. And I've been attending those meetings. I've been attending all those meetings. And I am for, you need to simplify this. It's not a petition. In fact, looking back in 2016, when they put all these onerous and burdensome conditions about a petition, this is all corporate driven. So citizens can't go and say, we need family leave, right? Like, let's say, let's say we need like 2 weeks vacation if somebody is pregnant or something like that, or a month, whatever it is. That you can't put this on a ballot. See, those people, the corporations didn't want that. They didn't want anybody to vote on that, so they shut it down. And how did they shut it down? By making this petition thing onerous and burdensome and difficult, right? And that's not the intention of a petition. It used to be that before the time of Lincoln, people that weren't even citizens, right, could actually sign petitions. So you didn't even have to be a citizen back then to sign a petition, because it's the final means by which a person can get justice or take care of a grievance that they're concerned about, is through a petition, right? Mm-hmm. So, and if you make it so burdensome and difficult for people, that's not the purpose of a petition. So yeah, the possibility of doing it through petition or again, but they would have certain requirements. One of the requirements in Orange County is that you have to sign up at least 1% of all the voters in a district, right? Then you have to have, I mean, it's just incredible the number of hoops you have to go through in order to do that. So that's one of the things that this committee right now is studying and, pushing back basically to say, no, we need to simplify this again because this is not fair. The other thing that is being explored, by the way, by the charter committee right now is expanding the number of commissioners that we have in the commission right now. We have 6 commissioners and 1 mayor, so we have 7 people.
Yeah.
If you divide up the number of the population that we have in Orange County, which is like 1.5 million, that's almost like 243,000 per commissioner that they have to represent. And so what this other committee is looking at is like expanding it, 7, 8, 9. And of course, they have to do a lot of research, the costs involved. Are there other counties that have the same thing, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of stuff, but they have 1.5 years to do this. I've been attending both of those meetings, each one of them. Those are the first 2 committees that they actually started with. But on, I think it's the 17th of July, that committee is going to be coming to my district. Okay, because the charter committee is actually going to different districts. They just went to District 4, and before that they went to District 6. And they all come out and listen to the citizens. So on the 17th, I'm going to go and I'm going to speak and say, I want you guys to consider, there you go. These are the folks. Yeah. They just had a District 4, Maribel Cordero. They just had it. Before that, Michael Scott. They went to his district. Then my district is coming up, District 3, Uribe. That's going to be the 17th of July. I don't know if where the others are at, but I think they've done District 5 as well so far. But anyway, those are the folks. And so the idea would be to expand this commissioners to maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 more, right? So those are the kinds of conversations that are happening. And most people that are not tuned to local government may not know, wow, you mean this is going on right now? Yeah, it's going on right now. And you can bring any of these issues to them. And, and then they will vote after they set up a committee, they'll study, boom, then the commission will then, this committee will go in front of the whole, not the county commission, but the commission that's been designated, which is, I think there's 18 in that commission, if I'm not mistaken. And then they will vote to say, yeah, we're going to put this on the ballot next year in 2024, right? So we'll see what come out of that. I'm hoping that maybe that they will look at the public banking thing, especially since they see my face at every meeting. They know that I'm highly motivated and highly interested in the process. Whereas in 2016, I didn't know that was going on. So now that I'm aware of it, yeah, we have to simplify this thing because this petition thing is completely unfair, completely unjust.
Yeah.
So just to let the folks that are listening to this, and James, if you ever have a chance to come to any of those meetings or anything like that, or maybe even interview somebody for your program, this is the stuff where citizens can really make a difference, and it's local government, and so Yeah, the petition thing is one way of looking at it, and so that's why I'm also interested in looking at that process, what that would be like, in case we need to go that route with the public banking initiative. Yeah.
Sure thing. Now, thank you very much for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh, I just have a couple of comments in the chat that I would like to get to if
Okay.
you have a little bit of
Sure.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure, man.
So going back to some of the early parts of when you first arrived, Hobo Roadie says every supermarket used to cash your check for you every week.
Mhm.
I remember doing that at Publix. You go to a Publix. If you had a check that you wanted to cash, you can do that. So,
Yeah.
but that's not the
Well,
exact same as a postal banking. But
right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. To get back to the postal banking idea, is that probably if you had an account with a credit with a postal banking, right?
Mhm,
You could cash a check,
mhm,
right? Or you could even have your company deposit the money to your postal bank account
mhm,
if we had a postal banking. And I'm all for postal banking,
mhm.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The next one is this is a great point from Warren Wagner. He says it's almost like public infrastructure pays for itself.
It does. It does. It does. Because look, we build the roads and then we have these tolls,
Hmm.
right? And by the way, the system we have right now is highly unfair. For instance, Orange County folks have paid for these roads that we continue to pay money on.
Hmm.
We've already paid for them many times over. But guess what? That money that we continue to pay is going to build roads somewhere else or somebody else in other counties. Why should that be? Why should
Yeah.
that be? Why? What? And if we had if we had it set up so the infrastructure is paying for itself, then we could, instead of paying the interest to the
Hmm.
banks, we lower our own taxes. Maybe there could come a time when we don't even have to pay for toll roads or toll fees, because you know what? The bank is doing so well that we don't have to have that kind of income coming in, right?
Mm,
You see,
yeah.
what will that do? I mean, I think businesses would be interested in an area where you can have that kind of thing where it doesn't cost so much to have a business. I
Yeah.
think maybe we could build our own internet, right? In Orange
Oh,
County, right?
that's another thing that I wanted to talk about too.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. What we could do that if we had our own public bank, because those are exactly the kinds of things that a public bank can actually finance, right?
Mm, yeah.
And I mean, imagine you don't have to pay all this exorbitant amount of money to for internet, and yet businesses are able to benefit from it. Small businesses, students are able to do that. How many students during the pandemic had to
Hmm.
stay home, didn't have internet connections, right? Got
Yeah.
further and further behind on their studies. I mean,
Hmm.
look at all the benefits of a public bank, because you know what? Wells Fargo is not going to finance our local internet. They're not going to do that. And
No.
if we decided to do it, it would cost us an arm and a leg.
No.
Like I said, 40-50% more of what it would cost.
Yeah.
And whether some of our politicians will have enough guts to actually propose it, that's another thing.
They would need to stand up the spectrum for that one.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. And as
Hmm.
long as our elections are paid for by private interests like that,
Hmm.
you know, then we're going to maybe say, no, I don't want to go against that. I want some money for my election from, from these companies, from these corporations.
Yeah. One of the things I was actually talking about, and this is in the same vein, is me and my mother were talking about our electric bill, and it has gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like for instance, you're caught in between a rock and a hard place, because for our county, you either have OUC, which is Orlando Utilities Commission, Florida FPL, Florida Power and Light, or you have Duke Energy, and you have to choose, and you don't get a choice. You wherever you live, that's who you have, and so you don't actually have a choice. And so I think it's the Tennessee Valley
Authority.
Yeah, Tennessee Valley Authority, which they actually have their own public utilities that is community owned, which for us, a public bank could actually pay for. And so the only part of your bill that you really have to pay for is operations, maintenance, and I think for emergencies, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And your bill is significantly lower than what it would be. The same thing can be done for municipal broadband, because I've had Ron Pacone on here a few times, and he talks about municipal broadband.
So, there you go. Yeah, exactly. The possibilities are there, and I think that it's just a question of looking at all these tremendous benefits that public banking could bring to our community. The reason why people have misconceptions about public banking is because they either don't know about it, or they, the people that are against it are certainly interested in giving out the wrong information, right? But I think that it's something that would be extremely beneficial to the community on many levels, and for many people, for small businesses, community broadband, safeguarding, protecting environmental lands, the situation with transportation in Orange County. We need to deal with that. The affordable housing, my God, that's right here in front of us, staring us day and night. Let me tell you something. I went to a meeting in fact, I got this data from one of the people in this committee, of the charter committee. Did you know that 50% of the space in downtown Orlando is empty?
All right, Nelson, I gotta go. I gotta leave. But Nelson, are you serious right now?
I am completely serious. And 50%? that 50%, and that came from the chairman of this particular committee meeting that I attended.
How much is that? How much of that 50% is 55 West, by the way? Because that place is absorbently expensive, and how many people are actually living in that building?
Exactly. Why? Because now a lot of people are working. A lot of those folks are working out of their homes, right? Wow. Now, let me drop the other shoe.
Oh gosh.
The other shoe is that a lot of those folks that own those buildings are going to be in a quandary trying to pay for those properties, which means that we could have in the next recession, we could have the real estate market, right? Especially this kind of not residential, but what do you call it? Business could be in a real trouble, right? Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, because how are they going to pay for these properties?
Yeah,
because people have moved out, and, especially downtown. In the past, people like to live downtown because they could walk to their jobs, but that was before the pandemic. But now, hey, wait a minute, I can work out of my home. I don't have to go to the office. And of course, then these people are stuck with empty buildings. And how are they going to pay than not on buildings like that. So, yeah, these are the things that we need to look at in the future. Why can't those that empty space be used for affordable housing, right? Or some portion of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Reminds me of this tweet, actually.
Yeah.
This was a great tweet. Got very viral.
Yeah.
Says casual reminder that a huge reason they don't want you to work from home anymore is because in terms of capitalism, it makes the dozens of skyscrapers and office buildings they built obsolete, impractical, unprofitable, and generally bad financial investment.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's just like, what? Like, it's like, why? Like, you guys built the infrastructure of the internet, which was great for your business, but now the workers don't have to come in. So now we don't even need your buildings anymore.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and that came from like the chairman of that, an attorney, by the way, who's the chairman of that committee, 50%. And the reason that was brought up was because one of the members of the committee was saying, oh, if we expand the number of commissioners, where are we going to sit them on the days where the commissioners sit, in the commissioners' room? It's like,
I'm sorry, what?
Give me a break. What? Wait.
Wait.
Yeah, I know. This is silly. This is ridiculous.
Nelson, do not tell me that that they're concerned about expanding.
Not they. One
is based on seating.
Yeah.
A seating chart.
Yeah.
I'm about to leave my own show again, man.
Yeah. One of the people in that committee kept bringing this stuff up. It's like, well, where are we going to sit these commissioners? We're going to be more space. It's like, I mean, that's so ridiculous. But so one of the rebuttals made by that member of that committee from the chairman was like, look, by the way, Orange County is looking at maybe expanding, the administration building is looking at expanding. They could expand to downtown. There's all that empty space, right? So that's not a problem. That really is not a problem. But this particular member brought it up, and that's not going to play. I mean, but the idea that there's so much empty space, and that could be used for other things, that may be a solution to these folks that are looking at losing their properties if they don't rent them. Otherwise, the city of Orlando is going to be a husk, an empty shell, and with all these properties just not being utilized. Yeah. So there's a lot of, that's why getting involved in these meetings and stuff, you learn a lot of stuff, and you see how some of this thinking that is going on doesn't make sense. There's another one, there's another committee that has just recently was put together by the mayor, Jerry Demings. It turns out that Orange County is doing really well with the tourist tax. In fact, it's doing so well that it's got like $300 million in profit, if you will, right? In other words, it's sitting on $300 million worth of tax from the visitors tax, or whatever you call it, right? Okay, whenever people come into our community, they have to pay taxes for their beds and to buy food, to rent a car, et cetera, right? These are what is called the tourist tax, right? But by law, Orange County can only use that part of money for only certain things. It cannot use them, for instance, for roads. He can't use it for public housing. He can't use it for building clinics. It's limited. I think it has to invest in promoting more what do you call it? More people coming to visit Orlando. It can use it to build sports facilities. See, this kind of stuff. It's like here we are sitting on $300 million. James, if we were able to divert 40 million, even 20 million, let's say, of that 300, we could open our own public bank, for crying out loud.
So we have the money.
Of course we have the money, but it's limited. This particular chunk of money is limited to what it can do. Now, I just learned about this committee, and they're having these meetings now. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to ask questions, because I'm going to say, wait a minute, you're sitting on $300 million, and you can only spend it this way? Do you realize that if you put 20 million or even 40 million, because remember, in our fractal business model, okay, or fractional banking, fractional banking, if you have $1, you can lend 10. That's how fractional banking works, okay? So $40 million, you can lend $400 million. Wow. You can lend $400 million. For what? To build roads, to build infrastructure, transportation, affordable housing, buy land, preserve land, start community broadband, green energy projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You see what I mean? But it requires, you have to, what's the word? You have to really speak to power. Okay? You really have to speak to power and say, this doesn't fit. This doesn't seem right. This doesn't add up. Look how much further this money could go if you had your own bank. By only taking 40 million out of 300 million, you have the potential in the 400 million, then you loan it out, build all these things, and then you get the benefit not only of it paying back that money, right? But also making some more profit from those assets that you've built, right? So I'm going to find out when they're having these meetings, because I want to go and say, wait a minute, what would prevent you guys from? And I know this is going to be, that would be a fight, because that would be a fight with the state legislature, right? And by the way, this is a conversation that's been around this community for a long time. The idea, like, wait a minute, why are we taking just all that money and just investing it in bringing more tourists that are going to use our roads, right? That are going to just create jobs that pay very little, not too, low wages, right?
Yeah.
In other words, this money is just going to benefit the guys that already have the money.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need to, we need to speak truth to power, You gotta challenge government officials. And that's why I want to find out about this meeting, because I want to challenge them. I say, like, wait a minute, do you realize that you could take just a little chunk of this and make it go so much further?
Yeah.
Than spending $300 million just on sports and attracting tourists? Come on, give me a break. Think.
Yeah, it just goes to show, like, for instance, you think about links and how they only operate for tourists. They don't operate for actual people who actually work in this town.
Right.
It's
Right.
just like, I can't tell you how many times where I've gotten off of work at 1 a.m. and then next thing you know, the last bus is already gone. So I had to walk home,
Wow.
3 hour walk, after
Wow.
working 10 hours,
Wow.
because they stopped the buses, at a certain time instead of keeping it running because they're like, well, we don't have the money when in fact you actually do. So,
Yeah, we actually, and that was one of the writers for one of the journalists for the Orlando Sentinel. That's one of the things like he keeps writing about is like, why should this tax only benefit the people that are already benefiting from it? Why can't we, open it up and use it for some other things?
mhm.
So again, I'm going to go to this meeting and I'm going to speak up and I'm going to say, look, you guys, you know, you have to challenge the powers that be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they just think that you've crowned them instead of elected them. That's
Yeah.
another thing. You know what I'm saying? We elected them. We didn't crown
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. They can take that crown and shove it. But, but,
Yeah.
uh, I'm running low on time because
Okay. All right.
I actually have a Marxism class that I have to go to,
Okay.
in a
All
few.
right. Yeah.
But look, Mr. Nelson, I would
Just
love for you to come back
Nelson's
and
fine, man. Nelson's
yeah,
fine. Yeah.
no,
I don't know.
and come back and talk about if you once you are able to attend these meetings, come back
Yeah.
and let us know about
Sure.
your findings as well, because
Yeah.
I think this would be very interesting because people, it's not just for me talking about Orange County. You could be talking about your county in places like Nevada or in Missouri, or if you're in Illinois. It doesn't matter. You could use
Yeah.
you can glean this information and use this for
Yeah.
your local government in order to change things, on a local level, or we can, kind of scale it and grow. But I would just love to have you back for that too. If you can let people know where they can find you as well, if they want
Yeah.
to get in contact.
Okay. So the first thing is go to publicbankinginstitute.org. Publicbankinginstitute.org. That's like the mothership of public banking movement in all of the United States. Okay? Publicbankinginstitute.org. Locally, we have Friends of Public Banking. That's our um, Facebook page, Friends of Public Banking. We just put it up recently, but just go in there and check it out. My friend and ally and really good friend, Eli LaSalle, he put it up and he's managing it. We've been doing events in the community. Of course, we meet with public officials. I think the next thing we're going to start doing is actually being invited to meetings, community groups, labor unions, anybody that will give us that wants a speaker to talk about a topic like this. We want to do that. So, James, thank you very much. More than glad to come back and talk about any of this stuff that I found out, especially since you live in Orange County. So you want to know about what's going on locally. And but again, like you say, this is all germane or relevant to other areas in the United States. And so if you want to get in touch with me, do it via the Facebook, drop me a line. I'll be more than glad to contact you and, and let you in on the good fight.
Thank you so very much. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you on, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, James. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
All right. So that was a great conversation. And I was glad to have, Mr. Nelson on. These are necessary conversations because a lot of times you actually get more done locally than you can do even state or federally. So I think this is a worthy conversation of having. So I deeply thank Mr. Nelson Betancourt for coming on and talking and explaining more about locally having public banks. I'm going to be going through some of the chat as well to finish up before I head out. One of the things that I wanted to also get to was this comment by SG says, Indira Gandhi, when she bailed out the banks in 70s in India, she made them all public banks. I think, honestly, you know what? Thinking about back in 2008, I think we should have nationalized all the banks that failed. And then even this year with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, they should have been nationalized. They should be nationalized permanently. Like, y'all don't know how to actually serve the people, so therefore we're gonna have to show you how it's done. That's what it feels like to me. Bryce Smith said Martin Luther King Jr. was ahead of his time. Absolutely, he was deeply ahead of his time, and I really appreciate it. That's right. SG says smash the like button. Do what SG says. Smash that like button. Thank you so very much. Oh, I forgot to get to this one. The Jam Mom, I'm sorry. Do you have any advice for people who don't live in ballot initiative states? Oh, I had that star too. I'm sorry. I forgot about this one. But yeah, that's actually a great question for him next time about people who don't live in BI states. I think that's also a really good question. Bryce Smith says, we don't need mansions. I just want to say that. That's the excess. Yeah, I'm tired of people living in excess, around us, and we need to change the system. It's just like Reality Revolution says, hoarders, absolutely. Ryan Wagner coming in with the jokes. Says Ryan Ryder says, be like White Gladys and build a coalition to F them boats. Hashtag White Gladys. Thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows. He says, with no income tax, what taxes will public banks be based on? We do have sales taxes and property tax here in Florida. So I'm guessing that. I would love to see the property tax on the larger homes, like the ones in Windermere and Isleworth. Windermere and Isleworth are some of the higher income areas in Orlando, as well as Winter Park. If we can, raise taxes on homes in places like Winter Park, Windermere, and Isleworth, then I think we can also use that as well. But like Nelson was saying, it sounds like we have a surplus as well. You saw Creative Experiment says California pays unemployment through Bank of America. Ooh, who constantly postpones payments. Oh gosh, Bank of America is the worst from what I heard. Goodness gracious. Roger Meadows says the Bank of North Dakota was established in 1909. Thanks for the super chat. Yep, X says, hey JB, can you possibly answer why RBN left spaces are ghosting, blocking me for simply asking questions? Nick blocked me, Savvy unfollow, INN both. I don't know. But thank you very much for the super chat. Marco Padilla says fractional reserve banking is how banks produce money. When we make public bank, we seize the means of money production. Wow. Yeah, that's actually a really good point, especially when it comes to fractional bank money. Seizing the means of money production is absolutely necessary. I think that we should do that. But, ultimately, these public banks really just need to go. They need to get out of there. You know what I mean? And so let me go to the rock fan. Solid like a rock. All right. So let's see here. All right. Oh, Lord. Roger Meadows coming in with the paragraphs. All right. Let's go here. Let's open it up. All right. So I don't know who D-Win was. They were like test, another test. Let me, what's this? Oh, nope. That's not what I needed. Okay. So thanks for the tip, Roger. Roger says, 1, let's push this as a local ballot measure for Orange County. 2, Part of the problem why we don't have co-ops is because banks think this is too risky of a model to invest in. Solution: ensure credit unions, local banks to absorb the risk of creating lending programs specific to co-op startups and workers who wish to purchase the company from their owners. Then have them prioritize working with co-ops. Just and he continues, says mandate to always have in their majority those with background in good governance, consumer advocacy, mutual aid, public financing of elections and domestic gang and violence prevention and intervention, public public education, health and transportation activism, and justice as it pertains to environmental sustainability, housing, racial, labor, addressing the needs of freedmen, sustaining agriculture, food security. Okay, so just to break down this one part here, where he said, so it says, part of the problems why we don't have co-ops is because banks think it's too risky of a model to invest in. Part of that is because they are so focused. Let me bring this down just a second. Because they are so focused on profit that they don't want to make the risks. So when it comes to capitalist system, they don't want to make the risks because they risk not making profit off of it. So it's just like, for instance, during the pandemic, we could have used the means of what's it called? It's an executive order where they the president, has a company produce something for the good of the country. I forget exactly what it's called, but they could do that. Companies don't have to necessarily do that, but the government can and absorb the risk when it comes to storing, right? And housing, like for instance, if they want to do like N95 masks or something like that, the government could actually use the money to store and and produce these things so that the people will have these things available just in case we have another emergency. Like for instance, what happening up in New York when it comes to all the smog that's coming down, because of the forest fires in Canada. Well, they could actually distribute these masks to all the people for free, so that people can have these N95 masks so they won't have to breathe in all this toxic air, right? But the thing is that a company won't do that because it's too much of a risk because they don't make any profit off of it. Well, it's the same thing with, investing into worker co-ops. These companies, these banks wouldn't dare want to do it because it's too much of a risk. But if the government does it, for instance, like with a public bank, they can actually absorb that risk because it's not that big of a risk to them because it's not really about profit, it's about the people. So therefore, then they can actually do that to, create a more of a bigger incentive for worker co-ops. But at the same time, worker co-ops means that workers actually have power. And worker co-ops are stronger than having a union because a union, they can throw their rank and file under the bus and team up with, the corporate dictators. And so, you have that risk for the union. With a worker co-op, all the workers have power, in the company. And, so this means that if the workers have power, then this can also make people look at worker co-ops and go, well, that seems like a more stronger system than unionization, because you don't have to appeal to the corporate dictators in their humanity to appeal to workers. When the workers are the owners, well, then you don't have to appeal to anybody. You guys are the owners collectively. And so when it comes to, that plan, it sounds a lot more solid in regards to worker co-ops and the like. So just wanted to bring that part out. I hope I explained it better. Well, not better, but I hope I explained it in my own terms, Roger. But anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. But he says mandate to always have in the majority those with a background in good governance, consumer policy, mutual aid, public financing of elections, domestic and gang violence prevention and intervention in public education, health and transportation activism, and justice as it pertains to environmental sustainability, housing, racial, labor, addressing the needs of freedmen, sustainable agriculture, food security. So this can also be a means to bring up money for, let's say, reparations, right? Let's talk about in Orange County the Ocoee massacre that happened, right? I think reparations should be paid for that. That could be on the local level, local reparations for the Ocoee massacre that happened here in Orange County. So, I mean, even when it comes to things like that, because that really is a debt that is owed to the Black people, the freedmen in Orange County, right? Continuing on, Rogers says, by their design, public banks starve tax dollars away from private bank cartel that props them up by keeping the taxes in the public bank. It keeps it at home instead of going to Wall Street to prop them up. Then a public bank, like all banks, are given the authority by Congress to create money. Takes in deposits, marks them up, issues out lines of credit for loans. In this case, public bank does it with tax deposits to fund infrastructure. Okay, I'm understanding. I'm picking up what you're throwing down, Roger. All right, and then the last one says global affairs is important. What happening at the federal level even more important. What happens at state level is more than that, but at the local, you can kill you if you ain't paying attention. See what happens at the local level when they try to sneak stuff past us when we're not paying attention. Hell, Jay, why not wait for them to report back? Go with them to those meetings. You are their constituent. June 1919 was when Bank of North Dakota was established. Thank you so very much for that, Roger. Appreciate it very much. If I have time and if I'm not on dialysis, I don't know if I have time for that. You know what I mean? But if I can, then I will. But thank you so much for that, Roger, as well. I actually let me check the Rumble stream to see if anybody's made any comments, because I am now doing live on Rumble. So if you guys would like to leave YouTube and go straight to Rumble, you guys can actually go to Rumble. I'm on Rumble and Rockfin now. So yeah. I don't see anybody on Rumble as of right now in the live chat, but I have people watching. So if you're watching on Rumble, hello from the Rumble side. Good to see you. All right. And I have 112 followers on Rumble now. So ain't that nice? So if you guys have not decided to follow me here on Rumble, Rockfin, or on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe or the follow button. It's free. Go ahead. Why not? So thank you so very much. Oh, man. I have to go and I have to be ready for my class in like 15 minutes. I got to get going. But thank you so very much to everybody. I wish I could have got to more chat, but the conversation with Mr. Nelson was great. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. If you guys would like to, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack. You guys can go to jaybefaunt.substack.com for email notifications so that you guys can be alerted to whenever I have lives or clips that are uploaded each and every time. Just to let you guys know, last week I did the Assata Shakur chapter 12 part 2. So I finished that up. I actually did that in a live, which was great. So I was able to talk about that. That was actually really good. If you guys have not, I recommend you guys go ahead and watch that as well. And then I'm going to be getting into Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. I know I've been slacking on that. My dearest apologies, but I've been doing a lot. So thank you so very much for tuning in for that. But yeah, go ahead and go to my Substack if you guys would like to get the email notifications. Also, thank you so much to the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, members. as well as anybody who sent me super chats. Thank you so very much to all of you. I would not be able to do this without you guys. And thank you for that as well. Also, just to let you guys know, of course, my RBN chapter here in Orlando, I'm going to be starting that up really soon. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also, send your information for the RBN chapter to me. Let me see if I can get that going. Let's see. I'm trying to remember where it's at. Let me see. And I'll put this also in the chat as well. Just to let you guys know, you guys have until June 30th. You guys have until June 30th to send me that info. Let me see. URL. Copy. All right. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the chat really quick. So you guys would like to join. If you guys are local here in Orlando, in Orange County, you guys can actually also join the RBN Orlando chapter, and I'll be, getting this information and send you guys your emails to the emails that you guys submit to me as well, so we can start helping people out in the community as well. So thank you so very much. Just make sure to do that. All right, so I just want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. This was a wonderful conversation, and I really want to have more of these conversations, especially in the near future, when it comes to, ways which we can affect change on the local level, especially when it comes to dual power and building the community and, being one with our neighbors more. So I think that's extremely important. And thanks again to Nelson Betancourt for joining me. And look, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. Hey, even if it's water, and laugh, if you don't have them, even if you do have them, because joy is revolutionary. And when it comes to, paying more attention to your local community, which I need to do more of, just, do it out of love. Do it out of love for your neighbors. Do it out of love for, your family, because guess what? Everyone we're related to, so we're all one big family, and do it for them, because we all are a part of one another, and that's what's really important. And yeah, even if you don't change the entire world, as long as you can, change somebody's world, even in a small way, in a beneficial way, that's what matters. We can aid people just in being kind. And with that, forehead kisses. I know you've been waiting for it. I got you. I got you. Anyway, love you. Bye-bye.